Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Dubick. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator from Montgomery County, and I welcome you to another section of In the Garden. Today, joining me are two other gardening experts, Kathy Turner and Mary Ellen Barnhart, and we'll hopefully try to answer some of your questions here today, gardening questions. But first, I was going to explain a little bit about who we are. We're the Montgomery County Master Gardeners, and we do provide services to the clients of Montgomery County, particularly in the area of like Ask a Master Gardener, what platform we have here today. We have other platforms as well. We have a speakers group that's still active, even though our extension office is closed. We're still giving talks, mostly they're Zoom talks, of course. We have several demonstration gardens, and they're open at a limited capacity, and hopefully we'll get them operating a little bit more here in the future. We have a therapeutic horticulture program. We have a youth gardening program. And we also have other programs as well. If you need to have want additional information, please feel free to contact us. During our program, we will post a link to our website. So if you have any questions about the services that we provide or any gardening questions, feel free to put that in your chat box. If possible, we'll try to get back to you here today about that. And I was going to start off really right now this week, sort of kind of what's been noticed in the garden, kind of what's hot in the garden, is that there's been a lot of weather-related issues, of course. There's been a lot of moisture, a lot of rain, and some of the things that's caused more diseases, like powdery mildew, rust, and other diseases. Some other things it's caused is that we've got some excessive growth on certain plant materials. Many of the ornamental grasses, other plant perennials like Joe Pye weed, and sometimes even things like coneflowers, they really have responded to this moisture and gotten tall. In fact, maybe perhaps too tall, and they're starting to, unfortunately, kind of lodge and fall over at this time. So at this point, I was going to introduce Kathy and Mary Ellen, and Mary Ellen is going to ask us some of the kind of questions that we've received lately to the Extension Office. And Mary Ellen, I'll let you get started.
Hi. The first question I have is from Judy, and she says that she has a bug on my tomato plant on my terrace. Is it a good bug, or do I try to get rid of it? And if so, how?
Okay. Now this bug here, or actually a group of bugs, they're called the leaf-footed bug. And they're generally too far and too few to pose any significant, say, problems in the garden. They do damage plant materials a little bit, but not all of them. Some of them may be predaceous and feed on other insects, but some of them do feed on plant materials. But they're mostly really just a curiosity. These little winged appendages on their legs, that's what helps separate them from other insects. But generally, they're just not an issue in the garden.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
My next question, I have another question, is from Agro Amber, and she wants help identifying and advising on how to get rid of unwanted plants in the 3 different plants.
So we've got a couple of pictures that she sent in, and what all 3 of these plants or weeds, if you will, have in common is the conditions that they like. They like moist, shady, generally compacted soils. Often you see them in the cracks between flagstone, bricks, sidewalks, things like that. One of them is relatively kind of new to us. It's called lawn marsh pennywort. And it has a foliage, it has a leaf that looks like maybe a more familiar common weed we see in the shade in our gardens, which is called ground ivy. So lawn marsh pennywort has a very small leaf, probably no bigger than your pinky nail. It's actually, I think, was brought in maybe into the United States for a couple of reasons, maybe to use in terrariums, maybe in the pet industry. And sometimes we promote it, but it can get excessive. It's usually an indication of, again, low light levels, relatively high moisture, compacted soils. So anything you can do to modify that environment, to increase the light levels, improve the drainage, that would help to, suppress the development of farm marsh pennywort. It can get very invasive. The problem is when it invades into some of our perennial beds, it's very difficult to hand pull that weed. It's a very difficult one. The other two plants are very relatively primitive plants in that they don't have a real good functioning vascular system, which limits their height. So one of them is moss, most of us are familiar with. The other one is liverwort. And those two, sometimes you'll see coexisting in the same area. Liverwort is more flat, scaly-like, kind of has a little bit of a rough surface. So sometimes people will promote these, again, in the cracks of their sidewalks, their bricks, their patios, particularly in areas where you have shady gardens. Like I think probably Taffy's familiar with down there in Tacoma Park, lots of folks have lots of shade. So sometimes they're looking for grass alternatives. So it's kind of interesting. Some might be promoting this while others trying to eradicate it. If you are trying to eradicate it, whatever you use you can use things like copper sulfate and other things, or something that kills the moss or the liverworts. But if you don't change the environmental conditions, more than likely it's just going to come back again.
Okay, thank you, Steve. The next question I have is on from Leanne. It is about caterpillars on oak trees. There are about 30 of these caterpillars on my 6-foot-tall swamp oak and on my 15-foot-tall pin oak. They are skeletonizing the leaves. What are they? And besides physically removing them from the trees, is there anything else I can do?
So the picture you sent in is of an orange-striped oakworm. And so this caterpillar feeds on oaks and other plant materials as well. And sometimes their populations can get really high. They're very gregarious, come in a group, they'll strip down a tree, a small tree possibly. There's some areas there's one generation a year, but mostly in our area now, we tend to get 2 generations a year. This one is earlier, and this one's going to come later. Sometimes they overlap. So sometimes we used to just primarily see these mostly late in the year, but that first generation gets started, you get a second generation, and generally the later in the year they are, the less problematic I would overall say that they are to the plant material. As a plant material, the oak has probably manufactured the bulk of its food by sometime here in the middle of August. So if it's stripped in the foliage, it's not as bad as if it did earlier in the year. You can hand pick them. There are a number of insecticides that are you can use to control caterpillars. Some of them are relatively soft pesticides, like soaps and oils. There's products that have BT products, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, and there's a strain of that will kill caterpillars. But for the most part, again, later on in the year, the less problematic they are, so you may just want to let them go. You can hand pick them off. Yeah, so they're very colorful. That orange stripe on it.
Okay, the next question is about dogwood trees, dying dogwood trees, and it's from Donna in Rockville. And she says that the dogwood is dying, and as we have walked around, we have noticed other dogwoods in distress. There a disease going around?
I don't know if Taffy's seen anything like this down in Tacoma Park, or...
Well, I have mildew on my dogwoods, and they always seem to get it, and they look peaky, but eventually the leaves are going to drop. You just gather up the leaves and get rid of them. Don't compost them or grind them up and put them back in your beds. Gather them up and throw them out, but dogwoods tend to get this.
So,
usually it won't kill the tree.
Yeah. So powdery mildew is something that's moved in onto our dogwoods over the last, 10, 20 years. Some plants are more susceptible than others. As Taffy pointed out, it usually doesn't kill the tree. It might disfigure the appearance of it. It can't get out of hand. Sometimes it can actually cause browning at other spots in the leaves. The other thing is we also had really hot periods of 90-degree temperatures over prolonged duration, and that causes the leaves to cup and bend and droop at times. You might see that more on one dogwood than another, but a lot of that's just the genetics of that plant. That one plant can't tolerate heat as much as another. So you'll see this in the variation for the population that's out there. But when the two get together, sometimes they are late in the year between powdery mildew and the drought stress. At times, you get a lot of cupping and kind of flagging of the leaves. Sometimes, which compounds it, are some other insects, borers and things like that. They'll be involved. But it's not that uncommon to see your dogwood to have this droopy kind of cupped leaves at this time of the year.
Okay, thank you. My next question has to do with peppers, and I want to know, what is the insect, and does it damage peppers?
Okay. Yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier, Mary Ellen. Sometimes on some of the sweet peppers and hot peppers, you get some puckering of some leaves, and sometimes you get some really small little spots, and the little spots, the dead tissue falls out, and it leaves you little holes. And sometimes people see the little holes and they think there's something chewing on their plant. And this is just more of a common problem in general. It's that the dead tissue falls out, you see these holes, and you think, well, you see all these holes on the cherry, something's been chewing on it. And it's really from a fungal or a bacterial problem. The other thing some of the plants will do, like cherries, maybe sometimes peppers, if it gets badly infected, it'll drop that leaf. It's the plant's response to try to prevent further spread of that disease. So it chucks those leaves. So if you might have some cherries, I don't know if Taffy's seen it, a lot of them drop their leaves now, and they look kind of naked.
I haven't seen any cherries, but this time of year, there's a lot of droopy plants because they're tired of the heat like everybody else is.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of cherries that lost their leaves. The whole tree's defoliated.
Yeah, you'll see that. And a lot of those are like Yoshino cherries and things like that. And so kind of goes back to what Taff said about powder. Sanitation is one of the best things you could do. You can rake up the leaves. You could still compost them. Put them in a compost pile. You don't have the leaves all spread out. Where it's easier for the spores to get spread around, disseminated. By putting them in there, turning it around, I would do that. Really doesn't warrant fungicide spreads, spraying fungicides. And it varies from year to year, the severity of the disease.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, my broccoli plants look pretty toasted now. Should I pull them out and start with new plants for the fall, or should I just cut the ones in the ground black?
Okay. So broccoli, it's kind of likes cooler temperatures, and you probably harvested most of your broccoli, I think, by now. So probably a good thing to do is to replant your broccoli. Get rid of those toasted plants, those plants that might be probably fading out on you. And you could start them from seed, but I think a good thing to do to capitalize on this in the next few weeks, I know it's still warm, but you can kind of see the shifting of the temperatures kind of oscillating, getting warm and cool probably in the next few weeks. Think about getting some little broccoli plants and replacing those. Go to the garden center, get some of the other broccoli, cauliflower, what have you, and put those in. So I'd go ahead and replant.
Thank you, Steve. My next question is, how do I keep yellow aphids from my milkweed?
You don't.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daffy. You don't.
You don't. Yeah, milkweed.
So,
they exist.
Yeah. So you see these yellow aphids, and they're real colorful because they have an interest. What they're doing is as they feed on the milkweed plant, they're taking some of the same chemicals that protect the plant from being eaten by other insects, and they're sequestering it there in their body. So they're telling other things that would normally eat aphids, hey, if you eat me, it's not going to taste good, or you might get sick. So they're sitting there on the plant, out in the obvious, pretty brightly colored orange with little black feet and legs and antennas and structures called cornicles at the end. But what they will do is they will attract other insects, other beneficial insects that come in there, syrphid flies, other things, lacewings. So it's kind of a good thing if you can just let that go. It may not look as sporty as you like, but it's part of that whole circle of life sort of thing. So you got your aphids there. By having them there, they're going to attract beneficial insects in there. Also having your milkweed plants there, of course, should hopefully attract some monarchs there for them to feed. So I'm afraid if you went after the aphids with any kind of insecticide, that would be a negative thing for the monarchs and things like that. So they're really bad. You could take a hose and hose them off.
Okay, thank you. My next question is from Melissa, and she says she planted my paper brush in the ground as it had been in a pot for years. All the leaves had dropped. Do you know anything about this special plant and what I may have done wrong?
Okay, well, paper bush, its real name is Edgeworthia, and I have since learned that Melissa got her plant, it was in a greenhouse, and so she planted it. It was, I guess, many years it was in the greenhouse, and then she got it and she planted it. It was mild, but as everyone knows, weather really heated up. So I would say that the leaves falling off is stress. The plant was stressed. It was taken from a nice, cozy environment and put out in the cold, cool, or hot, cool world. And it reacted by dropping its leaves. So I don't know what state it's in now, if she sees new growth coming where the leaves should be. But if the plant was taken care of, if she planted it in a good environment for Edgeworthia, which is part shade and good drainage, the plant should recover and maybe not bloom this winter. But if she sees new growth, then things are coming along. If she doesn't see new growth, well, give it time. I mean, this is where we really need to ask the person questions, to get feedback. But I hope it does well for her, because it's a fabulous plant. Really, really nice plant. Blooms in early January, well, sometimes late January, early February, when the branches are free of leaves, very architectural looking, lovely, fragrant flowers. So hang in there, Melissa. Don't give up on it.
Yeah. Staffy pointed out sometimes, feel free to, we'll need more information or need a follow-up. So feel free just to reach back out to us.
Okay. The next question is from Lisa, and she says, my coleus was beautiful this year. What is the best way to propagate it from these plants to stay indoors for the next year?
Okay, coleus can be propagated pretty easily. So you take the new growth, the top of the plant, I would cut the flowers off and dip the stems, leave a good bit of the stem, dip the stem in root tone or something like that. And I take potting soil. I don't mess with any of the other stuff. I mean, what I do is dip the stem and put it in a pot of moist potting soil and bring it inside in a sunny place and keep it watered, but not too wet because the little sprouts will shrivel. But it should take root, and if you keep it in a sunny place inside, by next spring, they'll be ready to plant outside. You can do this with many annuals. Some of them do it better than others, but coleus is one of the ones that does it well.
Also, you can take the coleus and just put it in water and wait for the roots.
Right, you can put it in water too, yeah.
And then plant it.
That.
Okay, my next question is from Dave, and it says, help, my fescue lawn is being invaded by henbit. Okay. It's expanding rapidly this year, further 4-inch height. When I try to pull up, the grass comes up with it. How can I control it? I look forward to your assistance. And there was no picture.
Oh. So I'm glad to hear about the mowing height. That's one of the most probably critical things you can do in maintaining the lawn is to maintain a proper mowing height, and also make sure that you're not allowing that when you cut your lawn that you're only removing about 1/3 of the blade tissue one time. So that might mean weekly mowing, sometimes a little more frequently. This year's been a really good year for turf. Commented that he had henbit. It could have been henbit maybe earlier in the year, but usually henbit is it's a winter annual. It kind of fades out, generally there in June. But there's another plant that's in the same family. Henbit's in the mint family. Ground ivy's in the mint family. You could have ground ivy, and the ground ivy is usually more of a problem than shade, the stones that run. But within about 5-6 weeks time period, probably the end of September, you should start seeing some of these other weeds called winter annuals starting to germinate. And one of those is henbit. And then it has a close cousin called dead nettle. And they're out and about. And there's others that germinate, weeds that germinate in the fall. They get to a certain size, maybe the size of $50, something like that, or maybe a little bigger. And they're done for the year. And they'll pick it back up in the winter if it's mild, or very late winter. We're talking like March, early March, and they'll pick it up from there, and they'll grow really, really fast. And then as it gets hotter, days get longer. There, maybe May, June, you'll see it flower. Probably, most likely May. So chickweed's another one of those weeds too. So there's two kinds of chickweed. There's a perennial chickweed and the annual chickweed. So the annual chickweed, dead nettle, henbit, those are some of the weeds that germinate here in the fall. They get us a little frustrated because they've already got a jump on us. So by the time we go out there and garden there, beginning of April into March, you just, so where did all these weeds come from? They got started earlier in the year. But by growing turf in sort of it's ideal situation, very sunny location, good air circulation, mowing it regularly, mowing it with a sharp blade, types of things. That will diminish the amount of weeds that you have in the lawn. In Montgomery County, you're limited to the types of pesticides, actually herbicides, that you are allowed to use on lawn. Most of these pesticides have to be essentially organic or essentially organic. There's a list of approved pesticides on the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection website that you can check out. You can also call our office or contact our office, and we can give some information about this. What most of those herbicides have is that they're not selective, so they can't kill the henbit and not affect your turf. There are a few selective herbicides that are organic or are allowed on that have been approved, just maybe a couple, not very many. So that's something we have to be mindful. The other thing, if it's an area where the turf's not growing well, then maybe that's not the best plant for that area. Consider maybe a shade-tolerant ground cover, or maybe mulch, something along those lines. And let the turf grow kind of where it does its best, and that's usually in the full sun.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. That is all the questions that we have so far. Are there any questions from the chat box?
No, I don't see any questions.
Okay. We'll move ahead then. So our next showing of our program will be on September 1st. I hope you can join us then. But in the meantime, excuse me, if you need to reach us, Taffy can tell you about another way we're providing service to the clientele in Montgomery County.
Yeah, so we have entered into an agreement with the Montgomery County Public Libraries. So every other Saturday, we will be doing an Ask a Master Gardener question and answer session through the library's website. So if you go to Montgomery County Public Library and click on events, they will, it may not be updated yet, but it will be soon. You can see when our plant clinics are. The next one will be next Saturday, the 22nd. And then the next one after that will be 2 weeks later. But you can log into the Zoom program and ask your questions directly to Master Gardeners. So that'll be happening starting, well, we've already had 2 shows now, and it's been very successful. And it's good because we can interact with you if you call in or if you Zoom in, whatever, and ask you questions, which is very helpful for solving your problem. So that's another way to get in touch with us.
That's great. Thanks, Taffy. And thanks, everyone. I hope you can join us again or come back and maybe tell some other folks about our program. And I'll see you on September 1st.
Bye.
Bye.